There were some technical difficulties at the start of this panel, but don't worry, you guys did not miss anything, so I'll be starting from when those were fixed and we're all ready to go. Okay, so as you can see, like in life, sometimes plush making in panels as stupid stuff happens. You just gotta roll with it. It'll be okay. So these are some of my first plush. When I first started, I just wanted to make things that didn't have any toys in the stores, so it was a lot of Pokemon and Legend of Zelda characters. And I saw someone at school that made a plushie, and I was like, I want to do that. So then I went to the store, bought some felt squares with my allowance, and that's pretty much it. I stole some thread from my mom. The rest is history. And I started sewing before Etsy was really a thing, so there were like no resources online yet. So a lot of those first few years were entirely like me just trying to figure things out myself. So it was just really hard. That's why a lot of my first plushies look really bad, because we're just trying to figure it all out. So I feel like this made me resourceful with all the trial and error, but over the years, a lot of other plush makers have been kind of mad about the lack of resources online, and so now there's so many resources for you to use, and I'll share some of those with you here. So so that first trip I made to buy all that supplies to make my first plush with, what did my first plush look like? Well, it was Link here. It was really bad, as you can see. He's got like 2 different colors of marker on him, thread everywhere. Surprisingly, no glue. This is just held together by like hopes and dreams. So I do still have him. I always recommend that you keep your first plush with you. I didn't bring him because he's so fragile, as you can probably see from this. I don't want him to break, but it's really inspirational if you ever like get stuck to compare what you're making now to like your first plush, because there's always such a vast difference, and it's a really good inspiration to see what you're doing now and what you're capable of. But it was all uphill from there. So here's some of my more recent plushies. And yes, I'm just showing this to get Link off the screen because he's embarrassing. And this is what happens if you just like keep at it. You'll keep making better and better things. So one of the hardest things about sewing, or any project really, is getting started. It's fun to imagine what you can do and go shopping for all the supplies, like looking through all the different fabrics at the store, all the different colors of thread. But it's also here, when you're surrounded by all these options, that it gets a little discouraging, because it's like, where do I start? What do I buy? What do I need? What needs to be done? And you might decide it's easier just to stop right there and not buy anything. Also, if anyone has questions at any time, feel free to ask. And I agree, it's hard to know what fabric to get, why there are so many different brands of thread. Do I stitch by hand or by machine? How do I use the machine? Well, don't worry, we are going to go over some of that to help you break through those doubts and hopefully encourage you to take your first stitch and your next. And before you know it, you'll have your very own Link plush. But that's not fair to you guys. Yours will look way better than that Link plush. So, to start, we will start with what you want to make. That will kind of determine what colors you get and like what supplies to get and everything. For most of us, I assume that will be ponies, but for me, it was that Link, and for some others, it might be Pokemon or something. There are a lot of different pattern resources out there that you can like find for free or buy. And one of the ones that I recommend is SewDesuNe. This is their like splash page for their website, and they have a lot of different patterns. And you'll also find them all over the internet too. So on SewDesuNe, there are patterns on the site for all levels of plush makers, from the most simple beginner patterns to more complex and involved ones, and every step in between, with plenty of great tips and picture instructions step by step of how to make each of these plushies. And since most of them are free, they're generally IPs, and it's usually things you're familiar with. So there's like Pokemon, Disney, Avatar: The Last Airbender, different things like that. And since you're more familiar with these IPs and everything, this will help you figure out like how different things fit together, because you're already familiar with the shapes and what it should look like. And there are also, of course, many different resources beyond this. Just she is an excellent place to get started. A quick search, and so for most of us, we're wanting to make different ponies. So if you go through Etsy, there are hundreds of different patterns, all kinds of ponies, from standing, laying, beanies, sitting, all kinds. And it can be hard to figure out how the 2D shapes work together to form the 3D shapes. And that's, there is, and this part is what a lot of people have trouble with visualizing how they fit together. So these patterns will start giving you the foundation of how these shapes work together to create the three-dimensional shapes. For example, 4 petals, as you can see in the top, that you stitch together, that's what you need to make a ball shape. So as you experiment with different shapes, you'll learn different things. So like this is a very simple ball, but as you get more advanced, you'll learn that like a 5th petal of the little 4 petal shapes will make an even bigger ball. And if you add more, it makes a more dynamic, like ovalish shape and everything. So it's all about experimenting and trial and error. And all that will come in time as you get more comfortable working with different patterns. Here's some of my first experimentation with more advanced patterning. These plush are all from like 2007. I remember being so proud of the Cubone and the Typhlosion here because I was able to like step outside my comfort zone and experiment with more complex patterns. They still look, you know, very basic, but for me, it was a huge step. And now that you have an idea of what you might want to make, it's time to get shopping. So when I first started, I used those felt squares. They were 25 cents, which was affordable for someone who was still getting allowance at the time because I was in high school. And despite what I did, I do not recommend using felt as your first sewing material. I know, right? No shame if it is, of course, but I found that one of the best materials to work with for beginners is fleece. So fleece is easy to find at Joann, Walmart, whatever local craft store you have left near you, online. They all generally will have some sort of fleece. The fleece at these stores is generally of decent enough quality that you won't run into the material tearing, which happens with felt. If you pull on it too much, it will rip, tear, form holes. So this will hold its shape a lot better. The stores that carry it will also usually have a large enough variety of colors that you can find basically what you need for whatever you're making. It's also pretty affordable and much cheaper than Minky, so when you make mistakes, you don't feel like you've wasted that much material. Like some stores will have it for like $8.99, some will have it for more expensive. You can generally find it for pretty cheap. It's a really good first material. And making mistakes is one of the best ways to learn. Nothing beats some good old-fashioned trial and error, because then you can kind of see, oh, that didn't work. Now I kind of know what to do for next time. And some people even stick with fleece over other materials as their fabric of choice, and that's perfectly fine too. I have seen far too often people get the advice that you need XYZ expensive supplies to start, and that's just not true. These are all things that you can work up to. Heck, I still have plenty of supplies to work up to myself. And especially if you don't know if this is something you'll stick with, you don't want to throw all your money into it right up front. By all means, if you want to start with Minky, go for it. But there's no shame in practicing with much more affordable materials or what you have lying around. As for thread, if you are devoid of that cookie tin of sewing supplies that every grandmother has.
Yeah. Where there's no cookies inside.
There's never cookies. It's always sewing supplies.
Who does this on purpose?
Right?
They probably sell them that way too. There's never cookies.
Yeah.
Just sewing material.
So I recommend getting just black and white thread to start with because that basically covers everything that you need. As you go on, you can get more different colors, but white and black will pretty much take care of every single project you want to start out with. White for the lighter colors and black for the darker ones. The basic Coats and Clark at Walmart or Joann is a great beginner thread to use. It's usually pretty cheap. You can find it at most stores, and it's really easy to find. Eventually, you'll work your way up to needing a rack like some. No, that's not my next slide. I forgot to put that slide in. Well, you know what the sewing rack looks like, where you put all the different threads on it. Eventually, you'll work your way up to needing one of those. But for right now, the cookie tin or just a few spools of white and black, that'll get you. As for needles, I use the Schmetz brand for my sewing machines, which you can also find at Walmart, Joann, different places. But the ones that I stitch with, I still just get whatever's at the store. There's not really a brand I'm loyal to, which is the basic normal sewing needles. If it can pierce through the fabric, that's really all you need. These tomato gears are great to make sure your needles stay in place and you don't end up in your foot, which has happened to me way too many times. The chili attached to the tomato, you might have seen these before, is actually filled with sand and other types of materials like that, depending on where you get it, which is really good for if your needle has any is not as sharp, not going through as good, is like getting dinged. You can put it in there a few times and it will help sharpen it back up. Also, side note, if you have trouble putting the thread in the hole of the needle, they do make little cheat tools that you can use to help you with that. Now, when I first started sewing, I only did hand sewing for years. The majority of my early plush and even some of my middle plush that when I first started using Minky, those were all made this way. And there's no shame with sticking with hand sewing. You have a lot more control with hand sewing too. I know the sewing machine intimidates a lot of people, and it is a bit of a learning curve, especially if you haven't done much sewing. It intimidated me at first too. So this is my sewing machine. This is where I do all my plushies now. I had a fancier one before this, but it broke, and right before a convention I needed a fast replacement. So I went to Walmart, picked up this one for 80 bucks, and it has just worked beautifully, so I've stuck with it. I will eventually upgrade again, but for now this works more than fine for me.
Did you get an upgrade today?
I did not get any upgrades.
No.
Oh yeah, I did get an upgrade. I got the little My Little Pony one. That was a great upgrade. All right, where was I? I lost my spot. Oh, there we are. So I checked the store again recently because I do recommend this brand for beginners, especially because of the cheap price point. It's still actually $80, so it is a great first sewing machine, and like I still use it today. It does everything I need it to do. It's easy to swap out the bobbins, and there's the bobbin is a smaller spool of thread that goes in the bottom part of the machine where the needle is down there. It's easy to clean, and without too many bells or whistles, it generally won't give too many complex issues. At most, your thread might jam, so you just need to like clean it out, rethread it, you'll be good to go. And like with all supplies, there are fancier models out there, but like I said, this is perfect for getting started. Sewing machines are great because they keep stitches exact and even, and also they allow you to work a lot faster. Like what it might take you 2 hours to hand sew, it can take you like 2 minutes to stitch on the sewing machine. And it's really great and helpful if you're looking to make bigger plushies. But with a sewing machine does come a lot of additional things to keep in mind. For example, you will need to consider fabric seam allowance. So this is a bit more of an advanced tip to keep in mind. When you're using the machine, you'll be stitching 2, sometimes more pieces of fabric together. So like, you'll be putting them together like this and then stitching them through the machine. Unlike hand sewing, you're not sticking strictly to the edge. If you do, your needle is likely to not stitch the entire thing. You want to put it in a little more. So when you do that, this is called seam allowance. And most patterns you get or for free or buy online will already have taken that into account, like you see here. The whole thing is what you cut out, and the dotted line is where your needle is expected to go while you're stitching. So it gives you that allowance right there. So when you trace the pattern on the fabric, yeah, it'll get you taken care of. So the space between that dotted line and the solid line, that's just what seam allowance is called. Now here is another advanced tip for you. So with seam allowance, unlike with hand sewing, you now have this extra fabric on the edges where you sew. It's kind of hard to see right here. You can see where the red marking is right there. There is a bit of fabric between there. And if you turn that inside out as is, you can see on the oh no side right there, that is causing tension on the fabric, and that's what's making it buckle like that. So when you snip into it, like where the red line is, that helps it look a lot nicer. Don't worry, we have a better image here. You can kind of see right here that you want to snip the portions of fabric at corners, like right there. And then if you're doing a curve, you want to make a lot of little lines along the curve. So that way it just eases the tension and makes your plushie look a lot better. This is a very advanced tip. Don't worry, this will all be on YouTube after this, so that way you can look back on it if you need to. So it's an advanced tip. It's a little hard to follow, but it'll make your plushies look so much better. Also, side note, because I didn't have a better place to put this, I recommend Polyfill brand stuffing. I get the 10-pound boxes at Walmart. They make the smaller bags. They also make 20-pound boxes or whatever. They also sell this stuffing at Joann's, but unless you have a good coupon, it is just a fraction of the price at Walmart. So that's what I get. All right, so there is no wrong way to make a plush. So you might like the look of the tension and the little buckling. It might work to make your plush have that like extra details to it, but it's all about experimenting and seeing what you like most. So now that we're more comfortable with our sewing supplies and stitches and everything, it's time for everyone's favorite plush fabric, and that is Minky. That is what you'll find a lot of like the plushies and vendor hauls or different pony cons and like online are made from. And minky is pretty much the material that they use to make baby blankets out of. So I started using minky a few years after I switched to fleece from felt. I towed into it as I could afford the colors because it is a little pricier. It can range anywhere from $12.99 to like $18.99 for a yard. And I love their professional look of minky. Minky is a fabric commonly used in baby blankets and is known for its softness. And since it's being used for baby blankets, what you usually find at the stores is the bumpy texture minky, because that's usually what people like for baby blankets, where it has those little bumps in there. You can technically iron those bumps out, but it's really not worth the effort, and sometimes it'll even come back. So unfortunately, the easiest place to get minky is online at different websites. So you can usually find some on Amazon, you can find some at Big Z Fabrics, you can find some at Hal Fabrics. I use personally Cali Quilt Co. And it's a company based in California, and they have a wide variety of minkies, and it's usually pretty fast shipping too. So with minky, the pile, which is a fancy word for just the nap of the fabric, and it's how far the fibers stand out. So with minky, it's about 3 millimeters. That's how far your little fluffy fabric is standing out. For comparison, the pile of like a fancy fur, like those Fluttershy over there, is about 1 to 3 inches usually. And the soft, small pile is what makes minky so soft. And with this pile, it becomes really important to familiarize yourself with how the pile lays on the fabric. So I'll put that down. As you can see, when you pet it this way, it's nice and smooth. But if you were to pet it this way, you can kind of see how it leaves that there. So it's like when your cat only likes to be pet in one direction because of how their fur lays. If you pet it the other way, your cat is not happy. Pretty much the same thing there.
I'm guessing Finn.
Oh, Finn just likes being pet. He doesn't care how you pet him. So all fabric fibers have a way that they lay like this, which you can feel when you pet it. And you want to make sure that all the pattern pieces you cut all have that pile going in the same direction, the same uniform direction. So that way, if you're like petting any side of it, it's all going the same way. It'll help it look a lot more professional that way. And when one piece of your pattern has the pile in the opposite direction, it can even make a portion of your plush look like it's a different color because of how the light interacts with it. So like you can kind of see when you do it there, it even looks a little darker, even though it's all the same color. You will also notice that there is a stretch to the fabric. So for example, when I stretch it this way, you can see it's like going out. But if I stretch it this way, you can see it's not going at all. There's no give. There's more give this way. So this stretch will affect how your plush look when you stuff them. And you can also experiment with this. So for example, these two kings were made by using different stretches of the fabric. It was just my way of experimenting. So the king on this side uses the stretch so it's long ways. Yes?
Were those characters?
It's King from Owl House.
Oh.
Oh no. Oh, there it is. It's back. It's gone. Oh. Okay. I think it's because there we go. We got it. We're good. Okay, so the king on this side uses the stretch so that way it's long ways. So that's why he's got like longer arms, longer horns. And then the stretch on this side is so he has wider arms and wider horns. And so you can kind of see the two different stretches make him look two different ways. So it's good to just experiment and see what works for you, what you like to do. And also, different fabrics will have different stretch to them, including fleece. Fleece also has a stretch to it. So the minky at Joann's, for example, will have a much larger stretch because it's a much lower quality minky. The minky at Hobby Lobby has less stretch than Joann because it's slightly better quality. And then name brand Shannon minky, which is what this is, will have a little less stretch to it. So that way it's just good to be familiar with what type of stretch your fabric has. So that way you can figure out how it will make your final product look. And you can see a common theme with pretty much all of this because you want to just experiment to see what looks good for you and what you like. It's just experimenting, trial and error, seeing what works. It's pretty much the same for every craft type thing. Now, plush making and any art really is not always a visible linear progression. So you're not always just going to keep making something better and better and better and better. It's like up and down. So for every super cute Dragonite Poké Doll, I believe all these plush I'm about to show you are from like 2011, 2012. So for everyone like this, you'll have this guy. Also, these photos are so small because they are old. This guy's awful. His face is just terrible. And for every weird Trico with kind of a butt head going on here, you're going to have a nice Cloud Jumper. So that also happened to me, of course. The first ponies I made were this Pinky and these little 3-inch ones that were a pain on my hands. I don't know why I made them so small. The two bottom ones, the Bride and the Graham, those are like, they're literally like this big. I don't know why I did that. So, yeah, like Chibis. So the Pinky I made is not the best, but she's not bad either for my first try at making a pony. She has felt eyes. She's got not a show accurate mane, but you know, you can see that there's trying there.
She's cute.
Well, my next pony was not very good, but I can also explain. There was a boy that I thought was cute, so I made him this rarity. This is horrible. Yes, this came after those Dragonites and Cloud Jumpers and everything, the Pinky here. This was my next pony. I mean, age has not been kind to her, but yeah, she's bad. She is
Not
really
kind to
bad.
any of us.
Yeah, age isn't kind to any of us, but especially not her. I mean, it looks like her eyes are kind of sewn shut. She's just really bad. So don't feel bad if you have some duds alongside your victories. It happens to everyone. And also, I don't still have this thing by choice because my husband said he would be super sad if I ever threw this away. He loves this rarity. I don't know why. This thing's horrible. And that's enough of my embarrassing plush for today. So if you have a sewing machine, one of the things you can do is what is called applique. Applique is just a fancy word for smoothly stitching one piece of fabric on top of another in an ornamental way. You can see that's done on the Glimmer. So it's like you put this fabric on this fabric and you just did the sewing machine like this. So there is a setting on the sewing machine for applique. On my machine, it is this setting right here. On yours, it might be something else. But it's what you can use to like give your plushies a little extra oomph. So instead of just stitching down one piece on the other and having like this uneven edge, it helps create a nice, even ornamental edge to it. So when I first started making eyes on my plushies, like the Pinky I showed you previously, I made them by sewing or gluing felt onto the plush. And then I moved on to using applique for the eyes, like these here. I used mostly black thread at first because it was easy to find and readily available, but also it kind of gave them a cartoony look, and I think it looks pretty good. Back then I did. Of course, now I use an embroidery machine for my eyes. So this is advanced tips time. I won't go into embroidery machines too much because they are a big purchase. Like the cheapest ones in the 4x4 area can run you like at minimum $300, at most like $500, $600. They get expensive. The one that I currently have, which is this one, is the Brother PE 800, and I paid about $800. I think they're like $1,000 right now, and they have a newer model. So basically, embroidery machines use thread to put an image onto fabric. You can use
colors.
Yeah, you can switch out the colors. It'll do one color and then you swap out the next color and do the next color. If you get fancier, you can have multiple threads, so you just push a button and it goes on its own. But it's all about, you know, trial and error, upgrading, all that good stuff. The one I have is just one color at a time. You can use this for eyes, cutie marks, you can use this for patches. The list goes on.
My cat.
Yes, with your cat.
My cat's
So to get this image onto your fabric, you have to run it through a special embroidery program that converts a picture into something that this machine can read and know how to put onto fabric. Or you can buy files already on Etsy. There's a lot of different files you can buy over there. It's a big learning curve to figure out what the machine can handle, how these programs work, what stabilizers you need, how to streamline images to be better, easily read by this program. What's that strange sound on my machine? Because I looked away for 2 seconds. That happens all the time. Don't look away from your machines. If you do, you will hear a strange noise and suddenly it's on fire. It's a lot if you're still working through the basics, so it's not really something you need to worry about. It's something to kind of work up to. When I first started sewing, I used a program called SewArt, which I believe was $75 flat for the lifetime of it. It worked great as a way to learn for the price. It was very simple and the interface looks like it's from the 90s, but I fast outgrew it. And the current program I use is this one right here. This is called Hatch and was $1,200, which was $100 a month for 12 months. So it's not one big lump sum. This is what Hatch looks like. It's expensive, but I love the editing features and how simple it is to make different files and edit them. Like this is the embroidery program, or the embroidery file for Shining Armor right here. Luckily, you can also find mini files online to buy, from eyes to patches to even plush on Etsy. And there are a ton of good pony file makers, from LilSyDesigns to Bakufun and Soapy Bacon, that you can purchase from when you're ready to go. So a lot of people will make what are called in the hoop plush. It's when you embroider like the eyes right here, and then you put another piece of fabric over top of it and it stitches the lines around it. So that way, instead of you using the machine does it for you. You pull it out, you cut it out, stuff it, attach some little details, and you have a plushie. So it's a really nice advanced way to do it. And this is how I make my beanies. The body and the head and oftentimes the hair are made entirely on the embroidery machine like this. Sometimes I'll stitch my own hair, but it's a nice way to streamline plushies and make like little cute keychains and different things like that. And the Pikmin here are made using this. Getting an embroidery machine is what gave me the confidence to do cons. I'd always wanted to try them, but I kept finding excuses why I couldn't or shouldn't. But getting an embroidery machine made a lot of those excuses no longer work. And because like it made it just so much easier to make different things for it. And I've been doing cons for almost 10 years now. Next year will be 10 years, and it's been a really amazing journey. From my first table there to my most recent, it's not my most recent, it was when I edited this version of the panel, but this is my Cider Fest 2023 table. It's been quite a journey. My first Roni convention was unfortunately the last Roni convention, but it's just been a great journey. Nowadays I do anime sometimes. It's when I did it mostly anime at the beginning. But now I mostly do pony and furry cons. So the one thing I like to do is occasionally make the same thing over and over again after a few years and see how I've improved since the first thing was made. It's a common art challenge you'll see on like Twitter and DeviantArt and other art sites, and I highly recommend it, especially if you're feeling down on your art. For example, the first Acellus I made here is from 2019, and she's fine, but you can see I was very unfamiliar with making pony plushies at the time. I wasn't making show accurate ones. I was making more chibi ones because I was used to doing anime cons. And then the next one was 2020, which is also on the steps. And that one was my first show accurate pony. And it was me attempting different things. You can see I did the stretch accidentally long, so her legs are like really long and thick, but she has trouble standing because of that. And then more recently I made those two. And even though one is standing and one is laying, you can still kind of see how the head shape has improved over these 4 images. Another one I did recently was the Sphinx here. I realized I'd made one every odd year, and you can see an improvement over the years as I tried different ones. And I can't wait to see what my 2025 Sphinx will look like. I plan to do the toothy grin again next time. I think that was really a good touch right there. I know this was just a brief plush making overview, but I hope that you've learned some things and have an idea of where to start and where to go. And don't worry about having trouble remembering any of this. This panel and other panels on MePlushYou will be on my YouTube channel. So, unless my camera's messed up, which happened once.
One panel.
One panel. I will close out this section of this with this comic, which is one of my favorite comics and one thing I love sharing with artists who are doubting themselves. So you can kind of see, he goes, my art sucks. How did you get good? By drawing a lot. But I tried that. It didn't work. And he goes, oh, well, keep trying. And you can see like his mountain of stuff. Recently, I got an email saying that like my Photobucket account was about to be deleted, and I totally forgot I had a Photobucket. So I went through and I found like hundreds of plush on there that I forgot I even made. What's up?
And I'm terribly sorry, not to plug myself in or anything, but that's exactly, this perfectly describes what I did with my dual disc. That took me 100 tries.
Oh yeah, it's
so that
you just have to keep trying, and like anytime that you see an artist that you feel is better than you, like you might have seen other dual disc makers, you just realize like they have probably made thousands of those, so that's why they're so good. And yours did look really good.
Thank you.
But yeah, like when I'm on the photo book, I felt once I forgot I even made, like I pulled some of them for the panel here that are just like weird. And so, you know, I have made thousands and thousands and thousands of plushies at this point. And you'll have lots of plushies behind you too. So don't be afraid if your first plush does not look great, like no one's did. Yours will be better than Link. So you know there's some plush maker that started out worse than you. So before we move on, does anyone have any questions?
One panel.
Panel is now. Panel is currently happening.
One panel.
Yes, what's up?
So my main issue with trying to stitch plushes, mainly ponies, is sewing the arms to the body. I've always had issues with that.
Yeah, that is definitely a hard thing to do. If you look up ladder stitching online, you'll find some good tutorials. That might be a helpful thing for you to look into, because everyone always has trouble. And like your first view, my first view where I stitched the limb on, it looks terrible and you can see like gapping. It looks like it's not attached properly. Look up the ladder stitch. It's all about the ladder stitch and like folding some of the fabric under a little bit. So yeah, hopefully that'll help you. What's up?
And I'm sorry, I know like my thing is completely different from a plush, but I'm embarrassed that like I couldn't do the cutie mark right, so I did like a sticker thing for it. I mean, is that okay at times?
Yeah, I mean, like my husband made me a pinky plushie because like some of our first dates was like he wanted to learn how to sew, and then we would just sew together. And when he made me a pinky, he just got a button of the cutie mark and put it on there. So yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, as you keep doing things, you'll learn better techniques and ways to do it, but there's no shame in doing little things like that.
To be fair, the paint wouldn't stick.
I mean, heck, you have a completed plush. That's not something a lot of people can say.
Well, it's not. Yeah. Also.
Oh yeah, or completed, you know, whatever it was. The dual disc.
Also, what's a question?
What's a question? I don't know. I don't know what a question is. I bet Google knows though.
Okay.
Okay, so now let's pivot to the creators of the fandom who have all had their own plush making journey, just like I did and just like you will. And I spoke to many plush makers to have them show off some of their first works as well, so they can encourage other makers. So there's no better place to start than with MePlushYou. So one of the best makers in the fandom, she is an inspiration to me. She's been an inspiration to so many different people, and she does amazing video turnarounds of her plush. She puts them on the Lazy Susan and like spins it slowly, and like there's no bad angles. Every single angle is just like picture perfect. And these are the words that she had for everyone because she wanted to share some words. So here's some hopefully inspiring advice to go with my photos. I've been making pony plush for almost 10 years now, and I think it's important to keep it fun. Keep trying out new patterns, new techniques, new materials. Keep evolving. Like with any art, don't compare your work too much to others, but look at your own progress and see how far you've come. And here is her first pony plush. As you can see, she has gone so far from this plush to her ones nowadays, and it's really inspiring. So next up we have Jack Larson. They're a maker from Russia, and they're known for their fluffy hair manes, which look amazing in person. It's a brushable, and the hair is absolutely just awesome. Probably the best artist of this brushable hair. Hasbro wishes it had brushable hair this good. And we had, so after this, we next have Jelly Pony, or Basil Leafeon is their Twitter handle. And they were suggested to me by some very happy customers. I really love how unique their works are, especially with the embroidery. And they're just the nicest person. And they wanted me to share this. I would want to say, I want aspiring plush makers to know that you can make plush even if you don't have an embroidery machine. Don't be afraid to experiment with different fabrics, designs, and textures. It can help make your work seem unique. And this is their first plush, so quite the growth right there. And I really adore this first plush. It's super cute, like it's super unique. You can see just the passion behind it. It's really good.
She looks sad.
She does. It's art, it's art.
It's sad.
And next up we have Peruser of Pieces. They provided me with so many different plush examples to show off that I couldn't fit them all. So I just shared some of my favorites right here. And this is what they wanted me to share with you. As for what I would like to say, I want to highlight my growing desire to portray more emotions in my work. through not only expressions but also posing and body language, and that's something I intend to work toward in the future. But I would also say for anyone starting out making art of any kind and feeling like they aren't good enough, I would urge them to look at my first Pinkie Pie, which I have right here.
That's not bad at all.
Yeah, that's good. And compare it to my more current work. If you put in the time and effort to better yourself in your craft, you can create your own masterpieces. But if you give up on yourself before you have a chance to bloom, you'll never know just how far you can go, which is really inspiring. So don't give up, because once you put, every artist will have like a plateau or like a roadblock where they just don't feel like they can go any further. Just keep making, trying new things, push yourself, try a new subject. And next we have Rubio Wolf. They're a longtime plush maker in the fandom and are just the nicest person you could hope to meet. And here's a selection of some of their works. And she wanted me to share with you. Don't be afraid to mess up. Just keep trying. Everyone has to start somewhere. Whether you make your own patterns or you use ones made out by others on Etsy, like My Little Waifu and Chloe Knight, SewDesuNe, for instance, there's no wrong answer. Just let your creativity shine. And absolutely. And here is her first plush. And
I love that.
it's super cute and also really like inspiring, because using that rose minky here, that sucks. It sucks to work with this fabric. So it's just,
I want to cuddle that.
I know, right? It's so cuddly.
She should continue making plushes like that.
Yeah, I love the ribbon too. Okay, so next up is Fleece Friendship. And like I was saying earlier, fleece is a legit material and you can stick with it if you want to. And this is what Fleece Friendship wanted me to share. I make plushies out of fleece, which is pretty unique, and anyone can learn to make plush. You don't need all the fancy equipment to get started. All it takes is a lot of practice and a good attitude. And they also shared their first plush with me, which is this Cadence. And that is such a bold choice for first pony plush. Most people pick like Pinkie Pie because she's a lot simpler. So major kudos to this. And then one of my favorite makers is Chibi Pets. And they have just some amazing works. And here's a sample of this. They also share on their Patreon every month like different patterns, like the shark right there is one of the patterns. So that way you can learn how to make some more advanced things. Chibi Pets is just amazing. They're such a nice person and they have such amazing plushies. And next up we have Lumi the Kieran. I always love how they do their eyes. They add some glitter to them and it's beautiful. They come out beautiful. And they wanted to share, I guess just keep trying. Failure doesn't stop you. You just keep trying new things. Push yourself and try again. Laugh at the mistakes and goofiness and have fun. Don't forget, it's materials. You can remake and you can buy new materials and you can learn and improve. Do your best to remember that your best will look different every single day. And this Fluttershy here is their first pony plush. And it's awesome that they included clothes with their first pony plush. Like, that is such a flex. That is so awesome. It's just amazing work. And next up we have Heather Griggs. Hey! Yeah. Praise Ellie's son over here. This is amazing. My co-host right here.
The co-host eating cake on the stage.
I thought the banana was a plush for a second.
No. So, they're known very well for two things. First is these cute little itty bitties. You've probably seen these around. They're so cute. Like, look at that cozy glow right there. That's crazy. And they're like this big. They are itty bitty. 2 inches. 2 inches. Very, very small. And second, the other thing they're known for is their love of Celestia. And they have made a wide variety of Celestias in all sorts of styles and shapes and sizes. And they're just really fun.
Love that first one.
Oh yeah, the Chaos Celestia here, it's an upgraded Aurora plush. It's super good. That one is amazing. I love the pink Celestia down there's face. It's perfect. And also, big Celestia right here. They had this to say. You don't need a fancy embroidery machine to make clean eyes and cutie mark, because I don't have one either. Fleece is still a good alternative to Minky, and sometimes those official plushies with the nasty brushable manes just need a glow up. And also I like Celestia a lot. Wise words.
Wise words.
Next up, we have another fan favorite. It's QT Pony. Hey! So he is an amazing life-size plush maker that specializes in Fluttershy, and people really love his plush and how cuddly they are. He also makes amazing accessories for his plushies, like jackets and socks that can come off. And I love that he's able to utilize both fur and minky for the manes. They just look awesome. I could gush. So this Twilight was his first plush. He had made different plush tests before this, and this was the result of that experimentation. And he wanted me to share, if I could make this first Twilight here, then I think realistically anybody can make a Twilight plush. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, and like Hibiscus, I didn't really utilize any resources either. I learned myself as I went. So yeah, just look at that. From that to that, it's awesome. And last but not least is Blackwater Plush. Her plush are very much loved in the pony plush community. And she also specializes in life-size cuddle plush that have a very unique look to them, especially in the face. You can spot a Blackwater plush in a crowd, and that's awesome. It's awesome to have a recognizable style. She had this to share. The first one is always the worst, but will also always have a special place in your heart, which is very true, and it's why I still have Link, and I guess I love him. One thing I love about Blackwater is the logo she has on the hoof of all the pony as her like artist signature, and also those Autumn Blaze hooves right there, super impressive. So that wraps up the artist feature and our time together, unless anyone has any questions.